How are you? That was a heavy episode, I know. So, but fear not, you have a lot of laughs in your future because what I've just been engaged in backstage it's not going to disappoint. I am Stacey Wilson-Hunt from New York Magazine and Vulture. Very happy to be here, and I would like to welcome to the stage Matthew Perry. Hello again.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. That was a real toe tapper, wasn't it?
Oh my, so much to talk about. So before we get into the Kennedys, I would like to know a little bit about your early years. You were born in Massachusetts and then raised in Ottawa. Is that correct?
That's exactly right.
Okay. I can't trust everything on the internet, so I'm going to need to fact check throughout the conversation just to make sure.
Okay, sure.
Okay. So those things I said were correct?
That's right. You're right so far.
Okay, great. And what is it like to grow up in Canada? What was life like for you?
Well, it was very cold. And we were talking about this backstage. It's very funny. A lot of very funny people in Canada. I think because it's cold. They warmed up with jokes.
A lot of time indoors.
Sarcasm and dryness and apologies. A lot of I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And did you have theatrical people in your home, and did you know people who were acted or performed?
No, not really. My dad wasn't around a whole lot, which is quite painful. But he was an actor, so that's probably why I became an actor. And he was a funny guy. But I got my start just in school plays, and I think it was 7th grade that I auditioned for a play and got a fun role in a play and really enjoyed it.
And then you moved to LA to pursue acting seriously when you were a teenager?
Yes, when I was 15.
Okay. And what was your goal at that point? Did you want to break into comedies? Did you want to do movies? Did you have a sense of what your
No,
dream
at that
was?
time I moved to LA to be with my dad, and I was a nationally ranked tennis player at the time, and I wanted to break into tennis and play it all year round.
More sunshine here, essentially, for tennis playing.
Yes, the weather was great, but the tennis was so good that I rapidly realized I could not play tennis.
Competition was a little different.
Very good tennis player in Ottawa. But got killed here, so I had to go into a different profession. And drama was the only course that I did well in school, so I got A's, and then somebody said, you can get paid for doing this. And I was like, really? So went into that. I got guest spots on shows when I was a teenager and in school, and then got my first movie when I was 16.
River Phoenix.
That's right.
Yes. What was it like to work with him? I spoke to Ethan Hawke last year about when they made Void, or is it Explorers together. Yeah. And he just spoke very glowingly of him and what a talent he was.
Yeah, he was amazing. And what it's like to work with him is you just go, you're better than I am. Your face is more chiseled than mine. So just sheer jealousy, really.
You also did guest spots on some of the most important programs of my youth, including Silver Spoon's Charles in Charge, and a very memorable arc on Growing Pains, which did not end well for your character.
No, I died on Growing Pains.
Do you guys remember the drunk driving episode? It was actually really intense and really sad.
Intense. And it said at the end of this comedy, it said 29 people have died of drunk driving while you've been watching this episode, and then it just went 30. And then ended.
Oh my God, I don't remember that.
Yeah, brutal. And then the next sitcom came on.
I think that was Alf back then or something.
Yeah.
So obviously by then you were sort of in the system, casting people knew you were funny, you were getting a lot of pilots. And then you worked with Valerie Bertinelli on Sydney, which I actually remember. That was a very funny show.
That show.
I do, yeah. It was funny. At that point, did you have an agent and you had said, okay, I'm committed to this business, I'm in it, I'm not giving up right now?
Yeah, and still fueled by just sheer laziness. I can't believe people are paying me to do this. Just joke around and have fun, and I still thought it was really easy, and then little did I know how really difficult it was, a business to, get buy-in. And I was getting, 90% of my sitcom auditions, and I had this theory that still sort of uphold to this day about getting sitcom auditions, which was what ultimately Chandler sort of became, which was just...
I'm sorry, who?
Yeah, I jumped the gun. I should have let you bring him up. I'll let you bring him up.
No, please. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about LAX 2194.
Sure.
Which was which was the precursor to this other incredible show. Which
Sure,
we'll talk about.
Chandler. Yes, sure.
I talked to Marta and David, the creators of Friends, a couple years ago, and they talked about when they were casting Friends, you were tied up in this other pilot, and then that pilot, thankfully, we'll say, did not go, and then you became available to play Chandler, or to at least audition.
Yes, I'd like to say a few words about LAX 2194, if I could.
Please do. I don't think it ever had a proper burial. So.
No. I was in my apartment one day, sobbing, as one is usually doing at the ripe age of 23 and out of work and being an actor, just sobbing. And I got a phone call from my business manager who said, "You are out of money." And I said, how about a little warning? And they said, "Yeah, you have no money left." So I called my manager and I said, "I need a job right now. Need a job right this second, right now." And the job he got me was the lead role in a pilot called LAX 2194 that was about, yes, I'll say it, baggage handlers at the airport in the year 2194. And real pilot at Fox, and Barry Kemp was the real show. Barry Kemp, the guy who created Coach, right? And I wore a futuristic shirt, and my job was to sort out aliens' luggage. The aliens were played by little people. And that was the job that took me off the market for a little show called Friends. So weeks later, just to punish me, I got sent the script for Friends, which had a character called Chandler, who spoke exactly like me. Might as well have said Matthew Perry character. And I was like punished for this forever. And my friends started to call me and say, "Listen, I read this part in this pilot. It's a really good show. Will you help me read for it? Because there's a part that's just exactly like you." And I would just go, "Yeah." And they would come to my house, and I would say, "Maybe if you, instead of saying it's really hot in here, maybe if you said, could it be hotter in here? Maybe you'd get the job." And they would use all my choices and read and get all the way to the network. And
do you have a sense of how long the casting process took for Friends? I mean, was this 6 months?
Because they couldn't find...
They couldn't know you were the hardest part to cast.
Yeah, they couldn't find the guy to play Chandler. And meanwhile, people on the baggage handler show are going, "Do you think we'll get picked up?" And I'm like, "Fuck off." So a friend of mine, I'm going to leave his name out, but this very funny actor, very funny guy, and we had sort of a competition as to like who was funnier going, and he was offered the part of Chandler on Friends and turned it down.
You have to tell us who this person is. You have to.
I really don't want to tell you, but Craig Bierko is his name. And he and I had sort of
very
this,
funny.
He's very funny, much funnier than me. Okay. But I like to say we had sort of a competition going until I won. But anyway, he was offered it and turned it down, and then somebody finally watched LAX, thank God, LAX 2194, and decided it was probably not going to get picked up, and then I got a reading for it, and I knew the second I got a reading for it, I knew my life was going to change. And then I read for Martin and David on Wednesday. I read for the Warner Brothers on Thursday. I read for the network on Friday, and then we started on Monday. Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
I interviewed the creators of the Golden Girls recently, which...
Same stuff.
Same stuff. Well, like kind of that heyday, the
Yeah.
sort of early 90s, the literal must-see TV era of NBC. And I asked, it was Tony and Susan and Paul created Golden Girls, and I said, when did you know that you had something that was in the zeitgeist? When did you know? And they said, even before that, like at upfronts, they knew. When did you guys know that you're like, oh my God, this is absolutely beyond my comprehension?
Oh, well, I knew when I read the script before, I knew this was going to be something for sure. I didn't.
And how was it different? I mean, were sitcoms so poorly written until that point where you actually finally read this really well-written ensemble comedy? Is that why it was so distinct?
Well, I had written a 20-something show 2 years earlier that I thought, I mean, this is the best. And I knew it was way better than that. And I knew that it was way better than anything I'd read before. And it was just character-driven and so smart, and the jokes were so funny. And there was lines like, Chandler in the pilot said, sometimes I wish I was a lesbian. Did I say that out loud? And I had lines like that in it, and I just knew it was. And then the first run through was, was when people just went, whoa, 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 there's something is going on here, and but nobody knew how big. Who could have possibly guessed how big it was going to be? But the first run through, I think, was when people thought, "Oh, this is not only
even before
written
air."
Oh,
even
yeah.
before. Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
And then it got the best time slot it could get, and all that stuff.
I remember. And what was that level of fame like for someone like you? You'd been around and people knew your face, but you were not, the guy on the cover of People magazine until that time. I mean, how did that impact you emotionally? And because I know it's not an easy transition. It's exciting, but it's not a natural state of being.
Well, I mean, it's great and very exciting, but it certainly doesn't fix everything. But you say that to people and they want to strangle you.
Well,
so it was great. I wanted it more than anybody else in the world wanted it. And then, you sort of roll with it and you realize it doesn't fix everything. And but what it does do is it gives you a way to express yourself creatively every day that is wonderful. And it was a creative place where, like, even the part of your mind as a writer you could pitch jokes and I thought that that's the way that it was. And then later in my career I realized, no, you're going to run into people that say it this way. And
you're the actor, not the writer.
Yeah, exactly. Hit your mark and say the line. And you're like, what? No. I can think and I have thouts that should matter. And
And on that note, and obviously Kevin was very much a part of this process too. I mean, if you had suggestions in the moment during rehearsal, would they actually make the changes?
On Friends?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the ideology on Friends was best joke wins no matter who it comes from. I mean, that was up to Marta and David what the best joke was. But I would come up with 10 jokes, and 7 of them were stupid, and 3 of them had a shot, But then I've worked in situations. Just recently, I was in a situation where that was not the case, and I was like, I created the show. Shouldn't I have a say in what's said on it?
And you gauged success whether the live audience laughed. I mean, you were in front of a live audience at Warner Brothers.
Oh, on Friends, yeah.
Okay.
But
that seems like a good gauge for success if people laugh, right?
Yep.
Okay. That's how I gauge comedy personally.
Yeah.
I read a story last week, and again, this is me fact-checking. I don't trust all this fake news out there. That said that you admitted your favorite joke ever on Friends was Chandler telling Joey, "You have to stop the Q-tip when there's resistance." And that is absolutely one of my favorite lines too. Is that in fact your favorite joke?
Yes.
And it is. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, good.
That joke was so good that I said it, and I had my hand out like this, and I knew it was going to get such a big laugh that after I said, "Joey, you're going to have to stop the Q-tip when there's resistance." and I holstered my own finger. Yeah.
Oh, very good. So 4 years ago, in a previous interview with you, I asked how it felt to end Friends, because we didn't want you to end it. You didn't want to end it. And you sort of said that day that you wish you hadn't ended it.
Well, I wanted to end it at the time.
Right, at the right time. But I still, I watched that final season recently, and it still feels so good. You know, that there's the sort of petering out that happens with a lot of these shows, and you're like, please, God, just end it. It did not feel that way. It never felt stale. It never felt old. And it never felt like you guys were bored or sort of kind of not engaged.
Yeah, I mean, if you take into account the people and the scripts and all that, there was no reason to end it at all. But the stories were kind of it was like a good time to end it, and it was 10 years, and that's a nice round number.
There are babies in the show. That's
babies
always
on
a
the
tough
show,
one.
but it was a good time to end it. Plus, we all just thought we were going to be gigantic movie stars. So.
The whole 9 yards was actually really funny.
Yes, but I had coming out the whole 10 yards.
Right. I
remember. So it was it was a nice time. We all cried, and it was very sad and all that stuff. But it was a night. You want to go out on top, but now we look back and we're like, how much money were we making for doing what? Because we were working like 10 hours a week by the end.
Making movies is
and
very
the movie
different.
you just saw, I was working 17 hours a day. 17 hours a day. I was like, guys, I'm a little tired. I'm just going to head back to the hotel. No? I need to stay here? 2 more hours of makeup?
Don't forget the leech-infested lake that you had to work next to as
Oh, yeah,
well.
when the car crashed into the water and I had to dive in after the fake person who, there was a doctor there, or a leech doctor, who had like tweezers to take leeches off you. And I was like, I used to work 10 hours a week. And no, we made more than $1 million a week. It wasn't just $1 million, it was more than that. And so where do I see the leech doctor? Ugh.
But look at all the character that you've gained in the last year from doing this kind of work.
Yes, exactly.
So much character.
Yeah.
So after Friends, Studio 60, which I think is one of the best, most underrated shows. Maybe a little ahead of its time, maybe not the best for network TV, but still a beautiful show. And then Mr. Sunshine and Go On. How hard was it to try to recreate this momentum that, as Matt can attest and most of your co-stars can attest, is impossible? How hard was that to sort of come to grips with?
Well, you have to change it up because you're never going to have that again. And we knew that at the time. We were all like, every time you walk up this flight of stairs, remember, it's never going to be like this ever again. And so you try to change it up, and that's what I did. I love The West Wing. I love Aaron Sorkin. I did 3 episodes of The West Wing. It's funny, I did 3 episodes of The West Wing and got nominated for 2 Emmys. I did 237 episodes of Friends and got nominated for 1. So I thought doing an Aaron Sorkin show might be a good bet, And that was really fun and really challenging. So you try to switch it up, and even Go On was a much more dramatic kind of comedy than most.
Had Scott, with whom you'd worked on Friends.
Scott and trusted him, and that pilot was extremely good.
It was a very good pilot, yeah.
Show.
It was.
And so you have no choice but to try to switch it up. And Mr. Sunshine was a show that I wrote, and I'd never done that before. I'd never written with. I wrote that with 2 partners, and I'd never created a show before, and I had all this creative control on that. And The Odd Couple, that was sort of my idea to bring that show back. And so you just try to switch it up and try to bring new things, because you're never going to top where you started, sort of. So.
Yes. And sort of post-Friends life, you have been very open about the work that you've done to help people with addiction problems. And you've invested a lot of time and money in the Perry House, which is a sober living home for people. Tell us a little bit about that and your work with Earl Hightower, which both of you earned commendations by Obama for your work a couple years ago, which is very nice.
That was cool.
Very cool. You had a funny line that you said you're award-winning alcoholics, I think was one line.
Yes, I'm one of the few award-winning alcoholics in the world. No, I don't like to actually talk too much about that, because it's just something that I like doing, and it's just something that's cool. And I had a beach house that I had, and a friend of mine had all these sober living houses around the California, and so I donated one of my houses for sober people to live.
Very cool. In your work with people who have those struggles, what are sort of misconceptions about those struggles that you would like people to sort of be more educated about? Because I still think even now there's so much misinformation, especially the way our healthcare system responds to people who have those struggles. What would you want people to know that you think is, I guess, not informed?
Again, I don't love talking about this too much, but it's at its core, there's still this crazy misconception out there that people who drink too much are doing it because there's a weakness in them. That's what I'd like to just break open and have people understand, that they're not doing it because of a weakness or because they feel like it, that it's a disease. And, if people are out there and they're drinking too much and they don't know why, just call me up and I'll tell them.
It's nice to have an advocate like you out there.
Thank you.
So the Kennedys. Obviously, this is the second installment of this series, which aired on Reel's first installment a few years ago. What attracted you to wanting to play this character, and what did you learn about the struggles of this family, which is hard to imagine what these people have gone through? What surprised you about the Kennedys that you didn't know before?
Well, I was doing a play in London, and I got offered this part, and obviously it's very different than anything I've ever done before. My roots are in comedy, as we've just been discussing. And I was interested just to, that I was offered something so different than anything I've done before. And I started to read it, and I was like, listen, I've done drama before, but this is a tragedy. I mean, this is the real deal here. This isn't even a drama. This is a complete tragedy. And to play a real life figure, there's a bunch of challenges that come with this too. So it scared me initially. Just reading, I read the first 2 hours, and I was like, whoa, this poses a tremendous challenge. And actors, as you all know, want challenges and don't want to turn down something out of fear, because we all have such a inner critic anyway. If we turned down something out of fear, we just would constantly be under our own covers and just hate ourselves even more than we already do. So I said yes before I got too much time to think about it, and started to get to work on playing this character, and started to read a lot about him and his autobiography, and I started to get to work on the dialect in the Kennedys, not just a Boston accent, but the very specific accent that he used. And
about that accent, maybe we can tell a little bit about what you shared backstage about
your
accent.
Sure. Yeah. So I had to work on, I became obsessed with getting the accent right. And they had a dialect coach that they had hired to coach me, but I was in London, so I had to do it all by Skype. So they said, work with them like 4 or 5 times. So I was like, I'm going to work with him 12 times. And I'm going to get this really right so that I don't have to think about it anymore. And I worked with this guy who, it didn't really work out that well, so I'm not going to say his name. John Lester is his name. John Lester. And I worked with him 12 times, 2-hour sessions each. I spent a lot of my time with this guy, John Lester. And at the end of me working with him in London, 12 sessions, 2-hour-long sessions, his name is John Lester. And he had me believing, I even was thinking to myself, this can't be right. And I said it to him. I said, did he really speak this way? Like in intimate conversations, he spoke this way? And this was the voice he had me believing. I'm not joking. I'm not exaggerating. This is the voice he had me thinking Ted Kennedy spoke like. I'm going to take the boat out. The Kennedy's going to take the boat out. The kids can fly home in the morning. And I was like, really? Do you talk that way in intimate conversations, like with his wife and his kids and stuff? That wasn't just for speeches? He just talked that way, like in intimate conversation? Yes, that's exactly the way he sounded. Like in a car, he would talk that way? Like, it seems a little loud to me. Let me do it for you one more time. I'm going to take the boat out. The kids can fly home in the morning. That's the way you want me to speak on the set. So that's exactly right. So I wrapped the play on May 25th, and on May 27th in Toronto, I started work. And in the morning, it was that line I had to start in the morning. And I had him come in my trailer, and it was inside a limousine with my wife. It was a line, I'm going to take the boat out. The kids will fly home in the morning. So I went over to my trailer, and I said, this is my first line. I'm going to take the boat out. The kids will fly home in the morning. And that's the way you would like me to say it in front of all the nice people? And he said, that's right on the money. So I go up, a little scared. I spend my 2 hours in hair and makeup, and we're in this back of the limousine. Kristen Hager, a very wonderful, very subtle actress, is in the back, and her line is, "So what are your plans?" And she goes, "So what are your plans?" And they say action. She goes, "So what are your plans?" And I go, "Well, I'm going to take the boat off. Kids are going to fly home in the morning." And the director goes, "Cut." Don't speak so loudly. And speak a little faster than you are. And I go, "Okay. Action. So what are your plans?" "I'm going to take the boat off. Kids will fly home in the morning." Cut. Don't say anything. And I go, "Okay." And I'm terrified, and I know I've screwed up in some way. And we finish the scene because they say, "Don't say anything." I don't have any lines anymore. And I go back to my chair, and the writer, knock, knock, very fast, knock, knock on my door. And the writer comes into my trailer and talks to me for about a half an hour, like a very long period of time, about Ted Kennedy and all the struggles he went through and all. I'm like, "I know, I read the books, man. What do you want? You want me to tone it down a little bit?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I went, "Okay, I need to talk to the director, and I need to talk to him right fucking now." And so the director comes by, and the dialect coach, John Lester, is in the trailer with me. And he goes, "Yeah, we just want you. We just want you. We want you with a slight accent." And I go, "Okay." I can do that. I can do that because I have a whole day of shooting after this, and I don't know how to talk, and we've already started shooting. So the director walks out, and I turn to John Lester, and I go, "The voice is wrong, man." And he goes like this. I kid you not. He goes, and I go, "Don't move your face up and down. Say you're sorry." And he was there he never said "I'm sorry," which is an interesting move, I think. And he was there for the rest of shooting, and it all calmed down, and I realized how to talk and everything, and everybody apologized, and it worked out fine. And oddly, my accent was more subtle than anybody else's in the movie after that, out of sheer terror, I think. But that's how the voice happened. Yeah. "I'm going to take the boat off."
It's like a very angry Eleanor Roosevelt. That's what it is.
Yeah. He didn't sound at all like that.
No, he didn't, it turns out. So before we get to audience questions, I want to make sure to mention another project you're just about to begin in New York, which you did a little bit in London already. You've written a play.
Yes.
And I like the description of the play that is in the press release I received. It's called The End of Longing, which is about an alcoholic, an escort, a self-diagnosed neurotic, and a well-intentioned dimwit walk into a bar. I feel like this is like a good project for you. This feels like...
Which part do you think I play?
No, I get a sense it's probably a mixing of drama and comedy and character study. And tell me a little bit about what inspired, first of all, to do this now, no small feat to write a play, but also why this project and why now?
Well, we were talking about earlier writing and coming up with stuff for yourself to do, which I think is a really good idea for anybody out there who's not happy with sort of the stuff that comes across your desk and comes. That's what I did. I was getting sick of some of the same stuff that was coming my way, and so I wanted to start writing stuff. But I was too scared to write on my own because I thought I could write dialogue well, but I was afraid of structure, and I didn't know which scenes should go where. So I always would ask for partners, and I just wanted to see if I could write something on my own. So I finally had some time off, and I was feeling sort of anxious and just at home, and somebody had told me that if you're anxious, just be creative and try to be creative and listen to that voice in your head. And so I just opened my computer and I started writing. I had no idea what I was writing, and these monologues came out of my head. These monologues came out, and these 4 monologues came out, and there were 4 different characters. And then I wrote a scene where all these 4 characters met each other, and I realized I'm writing a play. This is weird. Why am I writing a play? And I'm not going to make any money from this. Then I sent it out to friends, and they said, keep going, this is pretty good. And then that's how it happened. And then all of a sudden, a little bit time passed, and I was done. And that's how it happened. And the anxiety sort of dropped, and I was being creative, and that's...
Did you intend to write something dramatic or comedic, or just sort of...
Well, that's funny, too. I did intend to write something funny, and there are a lot of jokes in it, but it's also very serious. But I was backstage in London, and we just rehearsed, and it was the day of the first preview, and we were just in a rehearsal hall for a month, and I turned to the stage... Hi, I didn't see you. I don't know who she is. We had just been in a rehearsal hall for a month, and no one's laughing. And I just turned to the stage manager and I said, "I've written a drama. I didn't realize I'd written a drama." And of course, huge laughs. I just convinced myself because I thought nobody was going to laugh at my jokes, so I was like, "I wrote a drama." But no, there was a lot of laughter, and it was very successful there, and it was really fun. And so now it's going to off Broadway, and we start rehearsals in like 10 days. Yeah.
So be sure to try and catch that the next time you go to New York after May 18th, right?
Yes, previews May 18th and opening June 5th.
Great. Wonderful.
And in a theater about this size. So I expect you all to be there.
It's a good size. It's a good warm feeling in here. So someone who has the name Tammy Taylor, which is amazing. Hello, Friday Night Lights. Who's Tammy Taylor? Oh my God. That's... Oh, okay. Close enough, though. That's still cool. Tammy would like to know, what is a piece of advice that you would give to your 20-something self in regard to auditioning and succeeding in the business in general? It's a very good question.
Well, first of all, that's impossible. So you're crazy.
Are you talking about the time travel element of that? Oh, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I knew what you meant. Yeah.
No, I realize you're saying it's a hypothetical. Yeah. What advice would I give to my 20-year-old self about show business and acting? I would say, if you have a creative dream, you have to absolutely follow it, no matter how many people tell you not to. And just keep going, never give up. That was the thing when the Super Bowl happened and the Patriots were so far behind. I almost turned the TV off, and then I watched the whole thing, and I was like, ooh, just never give up. Never, ever, ever, ever give up.
Great advice. And specifically about auditioning, since that's something that most people in this room are engaged in on a regular basis. Do you remember doing things that, in retrospect, you think, God, it probably wasn't the best approach? Or did you do things that specifically someone said, probably don't do that next time?
Well, I taught a course in auditions, in sitcom auditions recently, and I found out my message was that, so this is not exactly your answer, but if you have a sitcom audition, I'll give you my secret, look for ways to say the lines differently than what they're expecting. Look for ways to say their lines, don't change the lines, look for ways to say their lines differently than the other 30 people who have been reading for them. Because that's what they want. They want their lines to seem brilliant. So that was my message in the course that I taught. And that's how I got all my jobs.
It's funny. I talked to Marta Kaufman last year about Grace and Frankie. And I asked her what it was like to write for Lily and Jane. After you get a few seasons under your belt, you realize, oh, that's her strength. That's her strength comedically. And I asked, of course, about Friends, because I can't help myself. And she said with you, they would underline words for you to emphasize, but you would emphasize other words. And that's probably where that magic came from and what you're talking about.
They started doing?
No.
They started underlining the wrong words so that I would turn them into the right words. And then they completely cheated. And so I would change them back to the words that were the right words.
Well, whatever you guys did, it worked beautifully.
Thank you.
Next question is from Mary Newsom. Where's Mary? Oh, there you are. Both front row.
You're right there. Hi.
She would like to know if you would ever portray a real person again, and if so, would you prepare differently or approach it differently? Aside from not using that speech coach.
I actually have a real answer to that. Well, sort of flies in the face of the whole story I just told, but you have to be very careful when you're portraying a real person, is what I learned on this. Because in spite of what I was trying to do with the voice, you have to be very careful about impersonating somebody, because there's an expectation of people know exactly how this person sounds. So the temptation is, and how they look and their demeanor, and the temptation is to just throw out an impersonation. But that sort of takes you out of the equation, and that's the problem. So it becomes less interesting. Anybody could do that, you know? And this isn't necessary, this is just the way that I approach it now, if I got another opportunity to do this. And I ultimately approached it this way that I'm saying, because it can become like a bad SNL sketch or like a high school play. So you want to bring as much of you as you can to it, while still adhering to the rules of looking like this person and sounding as much as you can like this person. But bring as much of you as you can to it. Like, the example that I came up with was I was just about to say in my work, which would make me vomit all over all of you. But what I tried to do is in the characters that I play, there's an inherent sort of yearning to the stuff that I do, and Chandler and everything, this guy for sure, but a sense of longing, a sense of yearning that in the people that I play, usually, they're never satisfied. There's something that they want. And Ted Kennedy had that. He wanted to be president. He wanted to not live in the shadow of his brothers. He wasn't as smart as they were. He wanted a better life than what he had. So, you know, I have that problem in life. I'm not satisfied. I want more. I want things that I don't have. So I was able to plug that in. That and this character and others seem to be exactly like Eeyore. And that's what Ted Kennedy is. I brought that to this character. Everybody's having a good time around him, and he looks like Eeyore. Like sort of hunched over and bummed all the time. It's like, cheer up, Ted, you're a Kennedy. But that's what I wanted to bring to him. And he's crying and he's bummed and he's like hunched over and he's sad, and you're like, dude, cheer up. And that's what people used to say to me, like, you're on Friends, cheer up. You know? But I was like, yeah, but everybody else is having a better time than me. I'm like you're, you know, so that's what I brought to the character. And if I got some other part, I'd find some other aspect of my personality to try to bring it in. Because there's a reason they hired me. It's, you know, so, because they could hire anybody. They could hire the best impersonator in the world to play Ted Kennedy. But they didn't. They hired me, and I assume it has something to do with that. You know? Does that make sense? Okay.
It's interesting that sort of inherent dissatisfaction, maybe it's just the curse of the creative person, where we're just constantly worried about what's next. Tony Hale told me that when he was on Arrested, which was the dream job after years of audition, he was so...
Bierko also turned down that show. Not kidding.
Craig is on Unreal now, which is great.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you guys,
He's a great show.
He is amazing.
So it all came full circle, and now everything's right in the world.
Worked out. But Tony said that he was so worried about his next job and how no job was ever going to be as good as his current job that he made himself sick with not being able to enjoy the moment. So I think that's actually the job may not last more than a couple seasons. It sort of seems almost just so detrimental to not try to enjoy where you are, which is kind of, seems like good advice. And finally, Lindsay. Where's Lindsay? There you are. Hi. So we sort of touched on this a little bit, but she would like to know if you enjoy comedy or dramatic acting more, and which is more challenging, which it sounds like it's an intermingling of the two.
That's a really difficult, really difficult question to answer, because it's really difficult to answer, because one would think my answer would be comedy, and yet there's a pressure in comedy to be funny, obviously. So, but drama can be very difficult. A lot of these scenes were very difficult to play, and yet the other answer is, like, I just was on The Good Fight, and I did, 3 episodes of that, and I would look at the day and go, so basically I just don't have to be funny? That's it? Well, that's simple. That's really easy. I just have to read these lines? That's like a joke. So it's really hard to, then I look at an Odd Couple day and I go, oh, I gotta be funny. Oh, I gotta be funny. I gotta say a joke. I don't want to. I don't want to like force a joke here. So it's really tough because I guess like I'll cheat the answer and say if it's really good writing, it's easy to do both if you're, talented and you like the material. But hardcore drama like this is really hard because you're having to pull up emotions and you're having to, like this was really hard just because it was like 50 days in a row of just torturous, I would look around, I'll end it with this. I'll tell you a story about shooting a tragedy that's funny, okay? So we're shooting this 60 days in a row. It's relentless. Everybody's being so serious all the time. I'm like, oh my God, this is driving me crazy. I can't sleep at night. I'm having nightmares. This is the worst. It's the worst. And I'm telling my kid he has cancer, and then I'm crying, and then I'm drinking, and then I'm 70 years old and apologizing to my wife through a door, and I'm trying to do anything I can. I'm trying to show that I like Jackie Kennedy by touching a cab door, and I'm like, just what can and everybody's being so serious, and the director's serious, and Katie's being serious all the time, and we're shooting in this abandoned children's mental hospital in Toronto, Canada at 4 a.m. And we're shooting the scene, and it's like 60 days in a row of this, and we're shooting the scene where Bobby Kennedy's, I think this was in part 2, I don't think you saw that tonight, but where Bobby Kennedy is lying in a hospital bed, and we're deciding whether to turn on and off his life support system. And it's 4 a.m, and we're shooting all the Kennedy families around him, and we just prayed, and we're during a lighting setup, and everybody's being so miserable. And I just turned to the whole cast and crew. Nobody has done this in the whole time. And I just said, you guys, you realize this isn't happening, right? It's not actually happening. And no one laughed. And I was just like, I'm so sorry. And like, that's why drama is so hard, and that's why comedy is it's all hard. But when you nail it right, you feel great, and that's why we're all here. And, oh God. And all I'll say is, I'm gonna take the boat out.
Thank you for coming, you guys. Have a great night.